Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. Today I am joined by Freddie Stevenson, a national collegiate football champion as a fullback at Florida State and author of the new book, Trials to Triumph. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below and I'll get back to you personally. And finally, you can reserve your place in one of my seminars or purchase any of my mind-body guides, also known as the PDFs, at www.crushingdoubt.org. Freddie, I really want to thank you for joining me. It's always an honor when people come to talk about the stories of their lives. And you have just written this book, which I understand is now a #1 bestseller, if I'm understanding correctly. And I know what it takes to write a book because I'm writing it. What led you to decide to write this book? What was the thing that kind of led to that thrust?
Really, it was just me going through my process and just trying to figure things out myself and knowing that it was someone out there that may be struggling, that may need to hear my story. And I knew that my story was a powerful one. And if it could impact one person, save one person's life, then I was all for it.
That's a fantastic message, and it's so great that you're giving back and using what happened to you to better people and to help them. So let's start with, listen, I'm a therapist, so the place that I usually start is your childhood. And I know you had some very, very hard times growing up. Now, I interviewed you on our sports show before, and if I'm recalling correctly, you actually had a time period where you guys had a lot of money and everything was fine. When did it switch?
Yeah, early on, everything was good. My father, I didn't know early on what he was doing. Then we found out that he's a huge drug trafficker in the area. Then the feds come in and they take him away. And he didn't have a release date. So immediately everything switches. We go from having everything to now my mother, she's faced with the tough task of raising 5 kids on her own. And things just got tough at times. We're homeless, bouncing around from place to place. Food was hard to come by. My mother working 2 to 3 jobs and just trying to make ends meet.
Do you remember having any particular thoughts? This might not be a question you can even answer, but do you remember having any particular thoughts about you and who you were in relation to your dad being taken to jail or not having food? Did it impact your sense of self?
Not at the time. I think at that age, you're not really conscious of everything that's going on. Just a kid. I remember visiting my father just thinking it was a field trip. I didn't really understand how serious the situation was at hand. So yeah, I didn't really understand what was taking place until I got older.
Well, and if I'm recalling correctly, you started to process it most when you realized how scarce the food was. It was like, whoa. So I was wondering if you could tell the story that you told me in the last interview about McDonald's. Just take me through that.
Yeah, my mother was one evening, about 8 o'clock in the evening. We hadn't eaten the whole entire day. And my baby sister, she's crying. Everybody's hungry. So my mother, she gathers me and my siblings together and she walks us all to McDonald's. Upon arriving, we walk inside and she orders a cheeseburger. And the total comes out to $1.05. And we didn't know at the time that my mom only had $1 to her name. So as she tries to hand the cashier $1, the lady lets her know that she has to have the nickel. For some reason, she couldn't take the burger without the nickel that day. So we watched my mom have to go beg for a nickel around McDonald's. And it took a while, but someone was generous enough to give her the nickel. And she was kind of hesitant at first, embarrassed. And she finally got that nickel, got the burger, walked us outside. And once she walks us outside, she immediately gathers us together, starts slicing it into 5 pieces, and hands it out to us. And we started eating. And as we're eating, my older sister notices that my mom isn't eating. And we all start noticing as well, and we start offering my mom some food. And at this point, she starts to break down a little bit. Tears started pouring out her eyes, and she turns down the food, and she lets us know to keep eating. And that was the moment I really realized like what was taking place. Just watching my mom, she couldn't eat with us that day. We knew that she hadn't eaten at all that day. And just watching the sacrifices that she made, because oftentimes she hid a lot of the things that were going on.
And so how did you guys get by? How did that start to shift, or was there a shift? When did it shift?
I think, to be honest, just we were just trucking along with family members that would help every now and then, and it's crazy because a lot of the help we were getting are people that are struggling just as bad as us, like family members that are barely keeping their lights on, but they're willing to help us every now and then, give us a place to sleep for the night, things like that. But oftentimes we would find ourselves in situations where with people that are struggling as well, sometimes they have to say no. And that's when we find ourselves bouncing around a little bit. But I think everything ultimately changed when my father was able to get out of prison. That gave us a few more resources. And a lot of people were they started helping out then. But before, it was tough because my mom, early on, people want to help, but then you become that person that's always asking for something and people stop leaning out their hand.
Right. Now, the book is called Trials to Triumph, and we're talking a lot about the trials. But at a certain point, some triumphs started to creep in, and you were a football player. So, and I know that was at least part of the triumph, not all of it. When did you start playing football?
I believe I started playing around 5 years old. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And when was it? When was the McDonald story? How old were you then?
Oh, like three to four then.
Oh, wow.
But
So
it wasn't too long after.
do you remember that? Do you remember it, or is this a story that you were told?
The McDonald's?
Yeah.
Oh no, I remember that situation.
Yeah, I guess it's
Yeah,
pretty memorable.
yeah, without a doubt.
Okay, so you started playing football when you were 5, and then when was it that you started to feel like, whoa, I can do some big things on a football field?
I mean, I've always had the dreams and aspirations to do big things. When I was playing early on in the park, things of that nature, all the older kids would pick me because I was a talented younger kid.
Right.
So I mean, you're always telling yourself that you can go pro, this, that, and the third. But I didn't really know that I could do that until I got to high school. To be honest with you,
And what was it like in high school?
high school is the first time I realized, like, okay, this is a different level. I might be able to take this, like actually go to the league off of this. And I remember my freshman year, I'm playing JV football, and I get moved up to varsity like the second to last game of the season. And it's a blowout game they put us in. I'm wearing number 64. I play linebacker. I'm like, man, they gave me number 64 at linebacker. This is crazy. But I come in for like 5 plays, and I made all 5 tackles. And
Wow.
I remember after the game, on the Monday after that Friday night game, the following Monday, the head coach, he brought me in, and like Florida and USF were coming in the office, and they were watching my film. This late in the game, I don't know why they're watching it, but he's letting them know, like, in 3 to 4 years, this is the guy. Y'all better be coming back for him. He's going to be the guy. And just hearing that kind of gave me a belief in myself. You want to believe, but you don't truly know. And a guy that's had experience and he's seen guys go to the next level, it takes your beliefs and your drive to a whole different level. So that's ultimately when I started changing my grind and taking it to another level.
Now, one of the things that I talk about a lot, no surprise, because I talk about mental wellness and I talk about mindsets when it comes to the body. I'm curious how you thought about the mental side of the game. Was it something that was on your mind about needing to be mentally strong? Well, when did that come into play? I know it did eventually.
I mean, I think part of my whole life was just being mentally strong. So I've always been that guy, regardless of the situation. Even on my team, I wasn't the most talented, but nobody was going to outwork me. And it was something that I just put in my head. Like, nobody can stop me. And I think it's just a different level of confidence and a different mindset you have to have in order to make it to the highest level of your profession. And a lot of things I would say, people would think I was crazy. I'd be talking to myself, self-motivation. It's just a different drive, you have to be a different type of person in order to be successful in what you do. And I was willing to do that.
Yeah, somehow it seems like you just kind of knew to do that. Now, you were injured at one point. Did I have this right? You were injured in high school at one point?
Yeah, my junior year, I got injured.
What was the injury?
I broke my fibula, broke my ankle, lost all the cartilage in my ankle, and broke a few bones in my foot.
And I think I remember we said that the doctors said you would never play again. Did
Yeah,
you
they
get?
said my career was in jeopardy. I may never play again. I just needed to focus on being able to walk properly.
Okay, now what did you think when you heard that?
To be honest, my heart dropped when I heard that. It's like, man, my dream, like I want to get to the NFL. That's my goal. I told my mom I would get to the NFL. But then I remember something coming over me, and I was like, man, no, I'm not allowing that to come in my head. I'm not going to speak that out of my mouth. I know it looks bad, but I'm going to get out of this situation. And I remember going back and forth with the doctor, telling them, all right, I'm going to show you. And they got a little heated in there. They're telling me, they're giving me the proof. But I'm like, all right, I understand that, but you don't know me.
That's such a wonderful story, and it's a great story that fits in with my podcast because I don't know if you know this about me, but I had 8 years of chronic back pain, and I really didn't think I could do much of anything. I stopped playing basketball, which was my favorite sport, and I couldn't do much of anything. And when I discovered that your mindset can actually change your physiology, I was blown away by it. You somehow knew that kind of intuitively, maybe not that specifically, but you weren't going to let it beat you.
Yeah, without a doubt. If I would have put it in my mind and spoke it out of my mouth that was my final situation, then my body would have followed along. I truly believe where the mind goes, the body follows. So I try to control the way that I thought, what I put in my head, what I allow my mind to process, and ultimately what I spoke out of my mouth, because thoughts can ramble all the time, but once you speak something out of your mouth, you're giving it life. So just making sure I don't speak those things out of my mouth and continue to speak positively.
That's so wonderful. I do have to ask though, and you may not know the answer to this, but where do you get that? Like I kind of had to learn about it. I didn't have that sense of my ability to control the bodily experience. Was it just innate to you, or you just kind of knew it somewhere, or did somebody tell you about that?
I don't know. I think it was probably part of watching my parents, how they operated, and just having that wisdom. It'd be times early on when I was younger, when I was dealing with battles as a kid, like Pop Warner, when coaches were trying to bother me. They had sons in the league, and they would try to make sure their kids played, and it would frustrate me. And I would allow things to come out of my mouth then, and they kind of trained me up in the ways, and then that's kind of how I live my life.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you recovered from this major injury, and partly because of your willpower and your decision to do it, which I think is fantastic. And then I know you got various scholarships, but you ended up going to Florida State. And in your freshman year, take me through what happened over the course of that year.
Yeah, my freshman year had a position change, which was tough for me, another mental battle. Well, ultimately, I was like, man, I'm here. I'm living a dream of mine. So we're going to make the most out of this dream. Early on, I was kind of fighting it. And it was just a situation I had to let myself know and just pinch myself like, man, you're living your dream. You wanted to play at a university like this. So just enjoy this moment. And things may change, things may get better, but live in this moment. Enjoy this moment. Because a lot of people would love to be where you're at right now. And things went well. We had a great season, ended up winning the national championship, and it was crazy to experience that, a life-changing experience.
Yep, and you're still wearing the gear from it, so you're still connected to it.
Yeah.
So, listen, your book, Trials to Triumph, I think one important thing that I would say about it is that trials and triumph, it's not usually like you have trials and then you have triumph. There were ups and downs, and at a certain point, you have told me you got into a pretty bad mental state. And can you tell me more about when that happened and what was going on?
Without a doubt. Yeah, it was after I was in the league and my career came to an end. I was just trying to figure things out, had tried out for a few teams, nothing would stick. And I was just trying to figure things out. And I just remember being out the game for a while and just feeling like my life was worthless without football. I had attached myself to the game for so long, and my identity was wrapped up into it. I never tried to figure out who Freddie Stevenson truly was. So once the game was no longer a part of my life, I had to sit down and figure out who Freddie Stevenson truly was. and I wanted no parts of it.
Yeah.
And that was ultimately it was probably one of the toughest parts of my life. We had all our struggles at a younger age, but the burden is your kid. The burden's on the adults. Being an adult now and having to deal with this, definitely the toughest moment of my life. I didn't know who I was, and I had to do some soul searching. And I remember times where I'm depressed and ultimately without the game and not knowing what I wanted to do next. I felt like there was no reason for me to even be on this earth. I had suicidal thoughts. So when you talk about mental health, it's something that I'm huge on. And it means so much to me because I remember a time where life was dark for me and I started living a crazy lifestyle, which I believe I told you about before. Mm-hmm. And the reason part of it was to make a living, but also the part I left out, I turned over to the streets because part of me was bitter, but also it's like, man, I stopped caring. Like, man, if I lose my life out here, all right, oh well. And that was my mindset. It was me being suicidal. And it's like, man, if somebody takes my life, I knew what comes along with the streets. If somebody takes my life, then I wasn't meant to be here. I'm better off this earth. I don't play football. And that was my whole entire mindset behind everything. It was basically me going out there trying to commit suicide without putting a gun to my head.
That's very well put, and I understand exactly what you mean. And that can happen in multiple ways to multiple people where they're not going to care about themselves anymore. They become self-destructive. How did you turn it around?
I think I had people around that ultimately believed in me, and I don't know. Sometimes you have people in your life, they just reach out to you. They get a feeling that something's going on. And I remember my mentor reaching out to me. He asked me to come speak. And I'm battling through everything. I really didn't want to come speak, but he's a guy that I have a high level of respect for, so I did it. And I went out and the event was crazy just to experience that feeling, going out and telling my story, speaking through my pain. And I remember I just was rambling for like 20 minutes because I'm not a speaker. I'm not a guy that, at the time, I'm not a speaker. I'm not a guy that likes speaking in front of crowds, and I'm still fighting all this pain. So I'm just going out there pouring out my heart to everybody. And I just remember everybody coming up to me after and just telling me how I changed their lives. And at this time where I didn't really know what was next, in that moment, I knew exactly what I was supposed to do with my life.
It's such a beautiful story, Freddie, and it's making me understand even more why you wrote this book, because you found a new purpose. And without football, you didn't feel like you had one, but I hear you. You found one. So now tell me about what's in the book.
Yeah, what I've done, we took every single thing from my hard upbringing, got your laughs, your cries. We got a lot of different gems that we're dropping in this book as far as the times I'll tell you about where I had to look myself in the mirror. And I'm not only telling my story, you'll have different challenges to the reader. Stop, take accountability. Look yourself in the mirror, figure out who you truly are, because ultimately, that's the only way you move forward. There's so many times in life we get caught up trying to look back and worry about what happened in the past. And one of my mentors, a guy that spoke a lot to us at Florida State University, his name is Trevor Moawad. He always has he talks about this neutral mindset. So what happened in the past is what happened, but ultimately what you do next is most important. Keeping that neutral mindset. You can't control what happened before, but you can control what you do next. And that's a huge challenge that I have in this book. And I think once people get through it from beginning to end, they're going to cry out some tears, but ultimately they're going to look themselves in the mirror, sit down and have that conversation, and be ready for what's next.
This is the question I had next. It's a hard question to answer, I'm sure, and your answer also can change over time, but do you feel like you have healed the relationship with yourself in a way that you feel at peace about? Or does it feel like this is an ongoing process, or is it some of both?
I think it's always some of both. Just you grow so much, and I'll be a different person in 5 years than I am now, different experiences, different challenges. So I'm always going to have to continue to fine tune and sharpen that. I can't the place where I messed up in my life, is I got to a place where I got comfortable and I no longer challenge myself mentally to that aspect. And I think it weakened me in areas. So continuing to challenge myself, continuing to soul search and find ways to stay in tune with myself. So ultimately, as I continue to grow, like life's gonna change. I'm gonna be older, like, and then you start thinking about, hey man, I may not have that much time here, and that could be depressing in itself. So
Mm-hmm.
continuing to find different ways to adapt and challenge yourself, so that when those challenges do arise, you overcome them. You stand the test of time. And you stand up tall, and that's ultimately what I believe. It's an ongoing battle. It, I'll win one battle, another one to be coming. And that's all life is. Life is full of trials, and life gives you the opportunity to triumph over those trials.
And have you found that with each trial you become stronger, or is it kind of reinventing the wheel when you, because everybody has a different pathway with this, but you've had to go through various trials. Did it feel when you were going through that second trial and you were feeling suicidal that you could rely on the old trials of having overcome the injury or having overcome the poverty, in your youth? Were those? Yeah, go ahead.
I think sometimes if it can be like you're reinventing the wheel, because when I was going through the situation where I'm suicidal, you would think that I'd come back to all these situations that I have been through before, and it's like, all right, man, I'm gonna get through this. I've been through so much before, but sometimes you forget those things in the midst of your struggle, and it's easy for me to sit here and say, man, like you should understand that, like you've been through so much, but we're all human. It happens. So you definitely at times reinventing the wheel because it's a new challenge. Although you've gotten through one that may be hardest, this is a challenge that you've never been through before. So adjusting yourself to this challenge, everybody responds in a different way. So life, you're definitely reinventing the wheel with this. It happens all the time.
It's an important point, I think. And, for my audience, one of the things that I talk about, when I talk about mind-body experience, I give people different ways to understand different parts of themselves or different things they can work on. One of the things that I tell them to work on is something that I call the power column. The only reason it's called columns is just the way they organize it on paper. But having power in your life, as I see it, equates to when you have a good relationship with yourself or when you feel good in relation to the world. And right now seems like a pretty good moment for you, if I'm reading you correctly. Does it feel that way to you?
Yeah, I'm at peace. Ultimately, every single day I wake up and I find a way to challenge my mind and dig deep. And I think just sitting back for a while during that time and just soul searching and coming up to this point, I think that's ultimately what helped me. I continue to sharpen those tools each and every day, and that's ultimately prepared me for this moment. Now I'm experiencing some things that I could have never imagined a few years ago, and I'm prepared for them. But ultimately, I'm not going to allow myself to sink and get myself down into a pit like I did in the past when things go wrong. Because I know challenges are going to come up, but I'm going to keep my mind sharp, stay firing on all cylinders. So when they come, I come too. I'm right there. It's going to be a fight. You may get some of me, I'm going to get some of you, and I'm going to come out standing tall.
I love that fighting spirit that you've brought to everything. So let's finish up on this. When people are having suicidal ideation, one of the ways that I think about it is that they think there's no way out. They think there's, it's like you at the end of the football run. You were like, there's no way out because there is no football and there's nowhere else to go. So you tell me if I have it right, but I think you didn't feel there was any way out. And that's how everybody feels when they have suicidal ideation. This is an important point that I think you'll agree with. Everyone is capable of having suicidal ideation. I've had it also.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about, I don't feel a way out. I have not had it in a long time, but you can easily slip into that mindset. And that's one of the things I was thinking I would want to say to people who have suicidal ideation. Is there anything that you would want to say to people about this kind of struggle and what you would recommend how to think about it?
Yeah, it's definitely a battle, and like you said, you never know. Like I've always thought, I remember thinking I would never be the guy. Like seeing people that struggle with it, thought everybody thinks it won't be them, and then it's you. It sneaks up on you. But ultimately, I think what what found, and the part that really saved me is no matter how suicidal people are, there's still that little grip of hope that's still in there somewhere. And that little piece of hope is what kept me going each and every day. So continue to keep hope. Continue to find a way to hope and believe in something greater. And that's ultimately what kept me going. Like, yes, I'm living my life reckless. I'm living crazy, but there's still some part of me that wants to believe that something special can happen in my life.
That's wonderful, Freddie. Now tell us, let's finish up on this. Where can people get Trials to Triumph?
It's available on Amazon and any platform where books are sold. So yeah,
Well, that's easy enough. So I highly encourage people. I mean, you guys can hear how inspiring Freddie is, all the things you've been through. Freddie, I want to thank you for your time. It's so generous of you to come here and share your story so openly. And I know it must sound weird for somebody who doesn't know you that well, but I'm really proud of you.
Appreciate it.
You worked hard for this.
Thank you. I definitely did. And we're going to continue to make an impact in this world, pay everything forward. And this is what we did this for. Like, everybody thinks it's about money. I did this with the sole purpose to make an impact in people's lives. I've always had a passion to serve. I just didn't know which form I was going to do it in. And it came up on me out of nowhere. So I was fortunate enough to kind of look up into it, having a mentor on my side. And sometimes our purpose is right in front of our face and we don't even know it. And that's what happened for me. And I appreciate it. And anybody that supported my journey, I appreciate you guys. And I just always had a passion for seeing people go out there and make the most out of their lives. I don't want anything from you. If I can spark one person out there, you can go out and walk in your purpose, and I've done my job. You don't have to mention my name, none of that. Just go out and be the best you that you can be.
Well, you're doing great work, Freddie. And thank you again. Let's keep in touch.
Yes, sir. Will do.
Freddie is such an inspiring story on multiple levels, but the things that jumped out at me about it were the way that he continues to apply his self-belief. Somewhere in him, he always believed he could do it. And he would hit roadblocks, and he would start to get to places that were often quite bad. But every time, whether it was the injury or feeling suicidal, or even when he was a kid and they had such poverty and hunger, there was some fighting spirit in him. And he's now enacting it in a way that has found his new purpose. It's one of the things that I love to see about the power column idea in general, is that you don't have to be stuck on just one thing. If something happens and you need to move on with your life to a different thing, you can find another purpose. And Freddie did that, and I'm thrilled for him and really moved by him. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally.